Isom Dart, 1849 to 1900. Born a slave in Texas, he became a skilled cowboy, rustler, and horse thief in Wyoming. Known as the Black Fox, he evaded capture for years before being gunned down by famed range detective Tom Horn. Cherokee Bill Crawford Goldsby, 1876 to 1896, half Cherokee outlaw who terrorized Indian Territory with the Cook Gang. Known for his charm and ruthless killings, he was convicted of murder at 18 and hanged in Fort Smith, becoming a legend of frontier lawlessness. Long-haired Jim Courtright, 1848 to 1887, gunfighter, lawman, and sometime outlaw, feared for his lightning draw and temper. As Fort Worth's marshal, he kept order with a heavy hand until a famous duel with gambler Luke Short ended with Courtright dead in the street. Dave Rudabaugh, 1854 to 1886, outlaw, rustler, and gambler, drifting from Dodge City to New Mexico, rode with Billy the Kid, taught Doc Holliday to handle a pistol, escaped jail twice, but met his end in Mexico, face down in the dust. John King Fisher, 1854 to 1884, flamboyant gunman and rancher, known for flashy clothes and a deadly temper. Ruled a swath of Texas as both outlaw and lawman. Survived countless gunfights, only to be ambushed and killed in San Antonio. Johnny Behan, 1844 to 1912. Cochise County Sheriff and political schemer, remembered for his rivalry with Wyatt Earp. Played both sides during the tensions in Tombstone, his alliances and inaction shaping the events that led to the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral. James Butler Wild Bill Hickok, 1837 to 1876, Union scout, lawman, and gunfighter with a deadly reputation and a flair for showmanship. Master of the quick draw, he met his end in Deadwood, shot from behind while holding the dead man's hand. Texas Jack Omohundro, 1846 to 1880, cowboy, scout, and showman who rode with Buffalo Bill Cody. A Civil War veteran turned frontier legend, he brought the Wild West to the stage, thrilling audiences before dying young of pneumonia in Leadville, Colorado. Doc Carver, 1851 to 1927, champion marksman known as the Evil Spirit of the Plains. A dentist turned buffalo hunter, he toured with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show before creating his own spectacles, famed for trick shooting and the death-defying diving horse act. Ben Thompson, 1843 to 1884, English-born gunman, gambler, and Austin City marshal. Feared for his cool nerve in deadly fights, he straddled the line between lawman and outlaw. Survived countless shootouts, only to be ambushed and killed in a San Antonio theater. Luke Short, 1854 to 1893, gambler, gunfighter, and saloon owner moving through Dodge City, Tombstone, and Fort Worth. Known for his sharp dress and deadlier aim, he played both sides of the law and survived the infamous Dodge City War without a scratch. Bat Masterson, 1853 to 1921, buffalo hunter, lawman, and gambler, famed for his cool underfire in Dodge City. Later a sports writer in New York, he turned from six-shooters to typewriters, trading the frontier's dust for the city's ink. Mysterious Dave Mather, 1851 to 1886, lawman, gunfighter, and drifter whose cold demeanor earned his nickname. Served as Dodge City marshal, tangled with outlaws and fellow lawmen alike. Vanished from history after 1886, leaving his fate, and much of his life, a mystery. Soapy Smith, 1860 to 1898, conman, gambler, and gang leader who ruled Denver's underworld with charm and swindles, notably the infamous prize soap scam. Built an empire of crime from Colorado to Alaska, meeting his end in a Skagway shootout. Doc Holliday, 1851 to 1887, dentist turned gambler and gunfighter, famed for his deadly skill and loyalty to Wyatt Earp. Consumptive but fearless, he faced the OK Corral and countless saloon confrontations. living fast and dying young in a Colorado hotel bed. Charlie Siringo, 1855 to 1928, cowboy, Pinkerton detective, and author who chronicled the Old West from the saddle to the shadows, trailed rustlers, robbers, and radicals, leaving behind memoirs that blended hard truth with the romance of frontier life. Tom Blackjack Ketchum, 1863 to 1901, outlaw and train robber who rode with the hole-in-the-wall gang. Feared for his temper and marksmanship, he was captured after a botched robbery and became the only man in New Mexico hanged for train robbery. Jack Slade, 1831 to 1864, stagecoach superintendent and feared gunman, known for taming the overland trail with a mix of grit and violence. Charismatic yet volatile, his drunken rages led to his lynching by vigilantes in Virginia City, Montana Territory. Bill Pickett, 1870–1932, legendary cowboy and rodeo performer, famed for inventing bulldogging, the steer wrestling technique still used today. A star of the 101 Ranch Wild West show, he toured the world, leaving an enduring mark on cowboy culture and rodeo history. Nat Love, 1954–1921, born into slavery, he became a legendary black cowboy and skilled rodeo champion. Known as Deadwood Dick, he roamed the frontier, mastering bronco busting and marksmanship, later penning a vivid autobiography of his life in the saddle. Bo Zycard, 1843–1929, former slave turned trusted cowboy and trail guide for Charles Goodnight, rode the great cattle drives of the West, famed for loyalty, endurance, and skill. Immortalized in Lonesome Dove, his grave bears Goodnight's heartfelt tribute. George Littlefield, 1842–1920, Texas cattleman, banker, and Confederate veteran who built a fortune driving herds up the Chisholm Trail. A shrewd businessman and philanthropist, he left his mark on the University of Texas and the state's cattle industry. John Chisholm, 1824–1884, cattle baron of the American Southwest, driving massive herds along the Chisholm and Goodnight-loving trails. A key figure in the Lincoln County War, he supplied beef to soldiers, settlers, and outlaws alike, shaping the frontier's cattle empire. Oliver Loving, 1812–1867, pioneer cattleman who, with Charles Goodnight, blazed the Goodnight-loving trail. Known as the Dean of the Trail Drivers, he died from Comanche wounds after refusing to abandon a cattle drive, inspiring a legendary tale of frontier loyalty. Charles Goodnight, 1836–1929, legendary Texas cattleman, trailblazer, and rancher who co-founded the Goodnight-loving Trail. Known for innovation and grit, he preserved the Texas Longhorn and inspired Lonesome Dove, leaving an enduring legacy on the American cattle industry and frontier history. Sarah Winchester, 1839–1922, heiress to the Winchester rifle fortune, she spent decades constructing her sprawling, maze-like California mansion. Driven by grief and legend, the house built for spirits became one of the strangest and most enduring mysteries of the American West. Mary Fields, a.k.a. Stagecoach Mary, 1832–1914, former slave turned fearless mail carrier in Montana. Tough, armed, and unafraid to brawl, she braved blizzards, bandits, and wolves to deliver the post, becoming a frontier legend of grit and independence. Big Nose Kate, 1850–1940, Hungarian-born prostitute, gambler, and companion of Doc Holliday. Fiercely independent, she moved through the saloons and gambling halls of the frontier, surviving Tombstone's chaos and living to tell her tales well into old age. At a place, elusive companion of the Sundance Kid and member of Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch. Beautiful, educated, and deadly with a gun, she vanished from history after South America, leaving her true identity and fate shrouded in mystery. Poker Alice, 1851–1930, sharp-dressing gambler and card sharp who won fortunes across the frontier. Known for her beauty, wit, and skill at the poker table, she carried a pistol in her purse and played the game on her own unapologetic terms. Laura Bullion, 1876 to 1961, Rose of the Wild Bunch, outlaw, robber, and forger who rode with Butch Cassidy's gang. Disguised as a man during heists, she served prison time before vanishing into quiet obscurity, outliving nearly all her fellow outlaws. Pearl Hart, 1871 to 1955, stagecoach bandit and one of the last female outlaws of the Wild West. Armed and disguised in men's clothes, she pulled off a daring 1899 robbery in Arizona, charming the press before fading into mystery. Annie Oakley, 1860 to 1926, sharpshooting prodigy who rose from poverty to star in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Known as Little Sure Shot, she dazzled audiences worldwide with her skill, precision, and poise, becoming an enduring icon of American frontier spirit. Calamity Jane, 1852 to 1903, frontierswoman, scout, and sharpshooter, famed for her rough manners and tall tales. A friend of Wild Bill Hickok, she roamed the frontier in buckskins, blurring the line between legend and truth in the Wild West's untamed days. Edward W. Wynkoop, 1836 to 1891, frontier lawman, Indian agent, and founder of Fort Lyon. As sheriff of Arapahoe County, he pursued outlaws, but later championed peace with the Cheyenne, standing against the Sand Creek Massacre and earning respect on both sides. Charles Bent, 1799 to 1847, trader, territorial governor of New Mexico, and co-founder of Bent's Fort. Killed during the Taos Revolt, his death marked a violent turning point in the region's transition from Mexican to American control. Frank North, 1840 to 1885, frontiersman and U.S. Army officer who led the Pawnee Scouts against hostile tribes. Respected by his men and feared by his foes, he blended native alliances with military skill, leaving a distinct mark on Plains history. Luther Yellowstone Kelly, 1849 to 1928, scout, hunter, and adventurer whose exploits spanned the Plains, Alaska, and the Philippines. A master of survival and diplomacy, he guided military campaigns, mapped wild country, and became a living symbol of frontier exploration. Al Sieber, 1843 to 1907, German-born chief of scouts for the U.S. Army during the Apache Wars. Tough, fearless, and cunning, he tracked Geronimo and other leaders across the Southwest, meeting his end in a blasting accident while working on an Arizona dam. Jim Bridger, 1804 to 1881, legendary mountain man, trapper, and explorer who mapped the American West's rivers and passes. A master storyteller and guide, he traded with native nations, scouted for the U.S. Army, and helped blaze trails for westward expansion. Ned Buntline, 1821 to 1886, dime novelist, publicist, and master of Wild West myth-making. He crafted sensational tales that elevated frontier figures into legends, fueling America's fascination with the West and cementing its larger-than-life image in popular culture. Buffalo Bill Cody, 1846 to 1917, scout, buffalo hunter, and showman who transformed his frontier adventures into the legendary Wild West show. With sharpshooters, reenactments, and pageantry, he carried the myth of the American West to audiences around the world. Kit Carson, 1809 to 1868, trapper, scout, and U.S. Army officer whose frontier skills made him a legend. Guided explorers, fought in the Mexican-American War, and led campaigns against native tribes, leaving a complex legacy in the history of the American West. Mangas Coloradas, 1793–1863, revered Apache chief and warrior who defended his people's lands against Mexican and American encroachment. A skilled strategist and fierce leader, He was betrayed, captured, and killed while under a flag of truce, fueling decades of Apache resistance. Victorio, 1825 to 1880, Apache war chief of the Chihenne Band, famed for his brilliant guerrilla tactics against U.S. and Mexican forces. Refusing reservation life, he led a relentless campaign across the Southwest until falling in battle at Tres Castillos, Mexico. Black Kettle, 1803 to 1868, Southern Cheyenne chief who sought peace amid rising violence on the plains. Survived the Sand Creek Massacre but was later killed with his wife at the Battle of Washita River, a tragic symbol of broken promises. Chief Joseph, 1840 to 1904, Nez Perce leader renowned for his eloquence and strategic skill, led his people on a daring 1,400-mile retreat toward Canada, surrendering with the words, "I will fight no more forever," embodying dignity in defeat. Quanah Parker, 1845 to 1911, last Comanche war chief and son of a captured white woman, Cynthia Ann Parker. A fierce fighter turned statesman, he led his people through the transition to reservation life, becoming a bridge between two worlds. Red Cloud, 1822 to 1909, Oglala Lakota, chief and master tactician who led the only native war to force the U.S. Army's withdrawal. Secured the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868, later advocating diplomacy to protect his people's way of life. Cochise, 1805 to 1874, Chiricahua Apache chief and master strategist who waged a fierce war to defend his homeland after false accusations sparked conflict. Respected for his honor in battle, he secured a lasting peace shortly before his death. Geronimo, 1829 to 1909, fearless Chiricahua Apache leader and shaman who fought Mexican and U.S. forces for decades. Master of guerrilla warfare, he evaded capture repeatedly before surrendering in 1886, becoming a symbol of native resistance and resilience. Crazy Horse, 1840 to 1877, Oglala Lakota war leader famed for his courage and vision. Key to victories like the Battle of the Little Bighorn, he resisted U.S. expansion until his surrender, dying under disputed circumstances while in custody. Sitting Bull, 1831 to 1890, Hunkpapa Lakota chief, holy man, and unyielding defender of his people. Guided the victory at Little Bighorn, later touring with Buffalo Bill. Killed during arrest, he remains a symbol of native sovereignty and resistance. Harvey Logan, 1867 to 1904, outlaw known as Kid Curry, a violent enforcer for Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch. Feared for his deadly temper and quick gun, he robbed trains and banks across the West before dying in a shootout with Posseman. Al Jennings, 1863 to 1961, train robber turned lawyer, politician, and Hollywood personality. After a brief outlaw career and prison term, he reinvented himself in films and lectures, spinning tales that blurred the line between Wild West fact and fiction. Charlie Pierce, 1866 to 1895, outlaw with the Dalton Gang and Wild Bunch, wounded at Ingalls, Oklahoma. Betrayed and ambushed by bounty hunter Dunn brothers at Rose Dunn's ranch, his violent trail ended in a dust and gunpowder betrayal. George Bitter Creek Newcomb, 1866 to 1895, outlaw with the Dalton Gang and Wild Bunch, notorious for his role in the Battle of Ingalls. Infatuated with Rose Dunn, he was lured into an ambush by her family and shot dead by the Dunn brothers. Bill Doolin, 1858 to 1896, founder of the Wild Bunch, a gang of train and bank robbers who terrorized Oklahoma Territory. A former Dalton Gang member, he eluded posses for years before being tracked down and killed by Deputy U.S. Marshal Heck Thomas. Big Nose, George Parrott, 1842-1881, outlaw and cattle rustler turned train robber. Captured after murdering two lawmen, he was lynched by a Rawlins, Wyoming mob. Infamously, his skin was made into shoes, a macabre relic of frontier justice. Johnny Ringo, 1850 to 1882, gunslinger linked to the Clanton Gang and the Tombstone Troubles. Known for his intelligence and deadly skill, he was found dead with a bullet in his head in the Arizona hills. Suicide or murder remains a mystery. Curly Bill Brocious, 1845 to 1882, outlaw leader of the Cowboys in Cochise County, feared for his violence and wild humor. Accused of killing Tombstone's town marshal, he was later shot dead by Wyatt Earp during the Vendetta ride. Charles Bowles, a.k.a. Black Bart, 1829 to after 1888, gentleman stagecoach robber famed for his politeness and poems left at crime scenes. Operating in California and Oregon, he never fired a shot. Captured in 1883, he vanished from history after his 1888 release. Clay Allison, 1840 to 1887. Gunfighter and rancher known for a volatile temper and deadly skill, claimed he never killed a man who didn't need killing. Survived countless scrapes before dying in a bizarre wagon accident while delivering a load of supplies. John Wesley Hardin, 1853 to 1895. One of the most feared gunfighters of the Old West, claiming 42 kills. Known for his quick temper and quicker draw, he served prison time, studied law, and was shot dead in El Paso by an off-duty lawman. Sam Bass, 1851 to 1878. Outlaw and train robber who led a gang across Texas, famed for a $60,000 Union Pacific heist. Tracked by the Texas Rangers, he was fatally wounded in Round Rock just days before his 27th birthday. Belle Starr, 1848 to 1889, the bandit queen of the Wild West, associated with the James Younger Gang and Cherokee Outlaws. Known for her flamboyant dress and fearless spirit, she was mysteriously shot dead near her Oklahoma cabin, her killer never identified. Bob Younger, 1853 to 1889, member of the James Younger Gang, riding in bank and train robberies across the Midwest. Captured after the failed Northfield raid, he spent the rest of his life in prison, dying of tuberculosis before he could be paroled. Billy the Kid, 1859 to 1881, outlaw and gunfighter who became a Wild West legend. Escaped jail twice, killed 8 men, and rode in the Lincoln County War before Sheriff Pat Garrett shot him dead at just 21 years old. Jim Younger, 1848 to 1902, member of the James Younger Gang, wounded and captured in the failed Northfield bank raid. Paroled after 25 years in prison, he struggled to adjust to freedom and died by suicide in St. Paul, Minnesota. Frank James, 1843 to 1915, Confederate guerrilla turned outlaw, riding with his brother Jesse in the James Younger Gang. After years of robberies and shootouts, he surrendered, was acquitted, and lived out his days as a lecturer and family man in Missouri. Cole Younger, 1844 to 1916, Confederate guerrilla turned outlaw leader in the James Younger Gang. Survived the disastrous Northfield raid, serving over 2 decades in prison before winning parole. Spent his later years promoting lawfulness and telling tales of his violent past. Jesse James, 1847 to 1882, Confederate guerrilla turned infamous outlaw, leading the James Younger Gang in daring bank and train robberies. Hailed by some as a folk hero, he was shot in the back by Robert Ford, a gang member seeking the reward. Fred White, 1849 to 1880, first town marshal of Tombstone, Arizona, respected for fairness and courage. Fatally shot by outlaw Curly Bill Brocious while attempting an arrest, his death deepened tensions leading to the OK Corral showdown. Commodore Perry Owens, 1852 to 1919, fearless lawman and marksman, famed for single-handedly killing 3 armed men in the Owens-Tewksbury feud. His calm under fire and distinctive long hair made him one of the most recognizable figures in Arizona Territory law enforcement. John Slaughter, 1841 to 1922, Texas Ranger, cattleman, and sheriff of Cochise County, Arizona. Known for his relentless pursuit of outlaws and rustlers, he brought law to a lawless land, earning a reputation for courage, toughness, and unshakable resolve. Charlie Bassett, 1847 to 1896, lawman and saloon owner in Dodge City, serving as sheriff and later U.S. Deputy Marshal. A friend of Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp, he kept order in the turbulent Cowtown before retiring to run saloons back east. Seth Bullock, 1849 to 1919, lawman, rancher, and businessman who brought order to Deadwood as its first sheriff. A friend of Theodore Roosevelt, he embodied frontier justice with an unyielding sense of duty, helping shape the Black Hills law and commerce. Tom Horn, 1860 to 1903, scout, interpreter, and range detective, feared as a hired gun in Wyoming's cattle wars. Skilled in tracking and marksmanship, he was convicted of killing a 14-year-old boy and hanged, though his guilt remains debated. Morgan Earp, 1851 to 1882, lawman and brother to Wyatt and Virgil, he fought at the OK Corral. Months later, he was assassinated while playing billiards in Tombstone, sparking Wyatt's deadly vendetta ride against those responsible. Tom Bear River Smith, 1830 to 1870, lawman famed for taming violent towns with his fists instead of his gun. Hero of the Bear River riot, he became Abilene's marshal, where he was killed in a brutal ambush while serving an arrest warrant. Dallas Stoudenmire, 1845 to 1882, Civil War veteran Texas Ranger and El Paso Marshal, known for his speed and accuracy with a gun. His 4 dead in 5 seconds shootout made him famous, but feuds and politics led to his violent death. Virgil Earp, 1843 to 1905, Civil War veteran, lawman, and older brother to Wyatt. Marshal of Tombstone during the OK Corral gunfight, he survived an assassination attempt that left him maimed, yet continued enforcing the law across the American frontier. El Fuego Baca, 1865 to 1945, lawman and folk hero of New Mexico, famed for the Frisco shootout, where he withstood a 33-hour siege by dozens of cowboys. Known for his grit and wit, he later served as sheriff, attorney, and politician. Bass Reeves, 1838 to 1910, legendary U.S. Deputy Marshal who served in Indian Territory, arresting over 3,000 felons. Born into slavery, he became one of the most feared and respected lawmen of the West, famed for his cunning disguises and unshakable honor. Heck Thomas, 1850 to 1912, fearless U.S. Deputy Marshal who helped tame Indian Territory. Known for relentless pursuit, he brought down outlaws like the Dalton Gang and Bill Doolin, earning a place among the famed 3 guardsmen of frontier justice. Bill Tilghman, 1854 to 1924, respected lawman, scout, and politician, celebrated for his work as one of the 3 guardsmen who cleaned up Indian Territory. Known for integrity and restraint, he was tragically shot dead while enforcing prohibition in Oklahoma. Pat Garrett, 1850-1908, lawman, rancher, and sheriff best known for killing Billy the Kid. His later years were marked by financial troubles and controversy, ending with his unsolved murder on a lonely road in New Mexico. Wyatt Earp, 1848 to 1929, lawman, gambler, and frontier legend, famed for the OK Corral gunfight in Tombstone. Known for his cool nerve under fire, he drifted through boom towns, ending his days in California, shaping the enduring myth of the Wild West.